Unemployment worse than is being reported. The Fed vows to keep rates near zero. The Fed also vows to prevent lower prices. They want inflation. And the sad truth about economic growth. Hey everybody, JJ here. Bull, boom, bear, bust. It is April 30th. It is Thursday. And appreciate you joining me here on this day to close out the month of April. And yes, as bad as the unemployment numbers are, they're actually much, much worse than being reported. It actually could be, just in the last 5 weeks, between 35 and 40 million people unemployed. And we did report on the official unemployment number of about 26.5 million over 5 weeks. But let's take a look at this article out of Vice right here. This is why the devastating unemployment figures are actually way worse than we thought. And we've reported on this, but this article does a pretty good job at pointing out how extreme or how far off the official unemployment numbers are over the past few weeks. A new survey shows millions of out-of-work Americans are struggling to get access to unemployment benefits they may be owed. And we've talked about this. Many of the state's websites are down because they're overloaded with so many people, such high demand for unemployment benefits. Now, according to the Economic Policy Institute, an estimated 7 to 12 million additional workers are struggling to get access to unemployment benefits. So guess what? They're not counted as being unemployed. They simply do not exist as unemployed individuals. And I know it may sound crazy, but you cannot make this type of stuff up. But then, believe it or not, it gets even more insane if you look at long-term unemployed people who also are not counted in the official unemployment numbers, and that's why we always often go to shadow stats, which tells you the real numbers. Now we're waiting for the latest set of numbers from shadow stats to come out. We're going to report on those here. Probably in just a few days we'll have those numbers available for you. So yes, in the last 5 weeks, closer to between 35 and 40 million newly unemployed individuals. Next, the Fed keeps rates near zero. I'm sure you've probably heard that by now. It's been widely reported. But to me, here's the pretty interesting part. The Fed vows to prevent lower prices. They want inflation. Let's go to this article right here. Out of CNBC, the Fed pledges to keep rates near zero until full employment, inflation come back. That's what we want to focus on right here, inflation. So the Fed is saying that even with all these newly unemployed people, that we still need higher prices. They are terrified of deflation. All right, so ask yourself, if someone's unemployed, no income, what is better? Lower prices, aka deflation, or higher prices, aka inflation? Right? Pretty simple to figure out, right? So why does the Fed want inflation? Because it is a scam. It is a scam against you and me. You see, they use other indicators, including gross domestic product, that look better when prices are rising. I'll give you an example. After 9/11, the military spending partly caused a big boost to GDP. There was other reasons in there also. You had a housing bubble that was inflating also at the same time. But anytime someone points to GDP as a sign of economic growth, please laugh at them, because by that theory you can go out and manufacture a bunch of tanks and bombs and blow stuff up, and that's going to be counted as economic growth because it's going to help the GDP. Right? It's completely flawed, it's completely insane, but this is the line that people have been buying for decades. Even mainstream economists use GDP as an economic indicator, and either one, they don't know how flawed and how much of a bad indicator it really is, or two, they're in on the joke, making people think that this is actually a good indicator. Recent article here out of NBC, GDP falls by 4.8%, bringing the longest economic expansion on record to an abrupt halt. Now, on one hand, you may say, well, of course, everything's shut down, GDP is going to drop, economic activity has fallen off of a cliff. Most people are stuck at home, between 30 and 40 million people actual unemployed, of course. Well, yes, that is the point. Everything now is going to be blamed on the shutdown and the sickness. They're not going to tell you about all the flawed numbers that made the GDP positive in the first place. Now it's all going to be about, hey, the economy was great until the sickness came in, and truly just messed up our wonderful, fantastic economy that was doing so good for so many people. Meanwhile, because of high prices, high home prices, rising inflation, tent cities are popping up everywhere, people falling behind on their credit card payments, their car payments, student loan disaster. Now, to show you how highly flawed the GDP number is, let's take a look at some year-by-year numbers, and let's look at the war economy just after September 11th, 2001, and take a look here. Going to go down to the early 2000s, and what do we see? Some pretty strong growth. We see the tech bubble here, and a lot of economic activity that was created by lending, spending, driving up the stock market. Then we see the drop there, but after that we did see a slight recovery, 2003, 2004, 2005, up to 3.8%, 3.5%. There was also a massive housing bubble being pumped up at that time. And then of course we saw it go negative in the financial crisis. Unemployment went up, but prices took a tumble. There was deflation. We also saw negative GDP. Now, for many people, including myself, who could not or did not want to buy a home until prices corrected, falling prices were good. It actually made sense to buy a home at that time. Also, rising prices and asset bubbles creates jobs. Think about all the jobs that were created when people were buying homes, flipping homes, the fix and flips that we see so many different TV shows talking about in the real estate market. That creates an economic boom because it has people upgrading their homes, Home Depot, home improvement stores, furniture stores. Now back to GDP, Investopedia even had a pretty good article about this. Does high GDP mean economic prosperity? Let's scroll down a little bit here in this article. GDP can increase after a car accident or a major flood. So again, if you blow stuff up, if there's devastation and destruction, that is going to be GDP positive. GDP can grow rapidly during a war or after an attack. Right, so all those people out there saying that GDP is an indicator of the economy, maybe they're hoping for some sort of destruction, devastation, or an attack. Right, again, you can't make this up. This is too backwards, too insane. But most people still look at it as a economic indicator, including those people on the mainstream channels. So yes, the Fed, they vow to prevent lower prices. They want inflation. That means higher prices for you and me. They're going to rescue the oil companies. So when you hear economic growth, you really need to look into the numbers and question the methods that are being used to define economic growth. It's complete fraud. It's complete foolery against the American people who sit back and look at these numbers and actually think that these are good indicators. Right? The real way to look at rising prices and inflation is an additional tax, a tax against you and me. Do we like higher taxes or do we like lower taxes? And Financial Web did a good job of explaining it right here, the definition of an inflation tax. It's not an actual legal tax paid to the government. Instead, inflation tax refers to the penalty for holding cash at the time of high inflation. When the government prints more money or reduces interest rates, it floods the market with cash, which raises inflation in the long run. An investor holding securities, real estate, and other assets, the effect of inflation may be negligible. So when you have assets, inflation can be good, especially if you sell at the top. This is the boom and bust cycles. You buy low, you sell high. Ride the inflation up, watch it come crashing down, and the millionaires and billionaires, they can come in and buy up assets when prices take a drop. But to fool the masses into buying into the false positive economy, they must point to these flawed numbers, including the false unemployment number, the false and fake GDP number, making people think that yes, this is actually a good economy, but it's really just lending, spending, and pretending things are good. And then when the system comes to a halt, people realize, wait, I have no money. I need to call my mortgage company and ask for forbearance. But they told me the economy was good. But most people are broke, so who is the economy good for? Well, it's good for the people at the very top, including the highly paid politicians and the corporate news that pushes this nonsense out to the American people. That's about all for right now, everybody. Thanks for watching. We might be back later today or tomorrow. We'll definitely be back. Thanks for being here. Bye for now.